think that
Okay,
everyone.
so it looks like everybody has spoken. Have I missed anyone? Okay, so regular Tuesday night meeting of Shiphrahs Circle Community Doula Program. I am Sarah Morgan, Executive Director and founder and all that good stuff. We have a guest with us today. I'm gonna allow her to introduce herself, and then kind of move into our conversation, which I'm really happy Morgan just out of the blue was contacting me about another but deeply related issue, and then we got into conversation, and I was really happy to hear her openness to come and our listen to our practice, listen to what's going on, because I think we're a small little micro of what's happening on the macro for doulas everywhere. Um, Morgan will speak more about this, but she's the person who's working on issues of policy. And one of my particular frustrations is that there's a lot of policy talk happening that doulas are not at the table, and the focus is not specifically on what doulas need to do their job that everybody else is talking about. So I was really happy to hear somebody who's willing to hear some of our experiences of doing this work. So me feeling wise, I'm doing as well as I did yesterday. If you talked to me yesterday, you know. If you want to know, you call me tomorrow to make room for talking to our wonderful guest, Morgan. So first, introduce yourself, and then we'll move into conversation. Tell us about your project too.
Yeah, thank you so much, Samsara, for inviting me. And it was really great to connect with you as well. I really enjoyed it. It's always refreshing to speak with people in the birth working space that have had the experience that we need to listen and learn from. So it's really a privilege, and I really am just happy to be here and learn from you all. I'm the director of the Birth Equity Advocacy Project here in California. We're a nonprofit, we're 501c4, so forgive me if I'm being a little redundant, but we actually only focus on lobbying and advocating for equity in maternal care. And right now, we advocate for equity for all, but right now we know the gaps and disparities most affect disproportionately African-American women of color. And so we are prioritizing our efforts in that direction. And with that, we've learned through our work one of the most important pieces of what this space needs and what it has had and what has been a tumultuous history, right, in the birthing space is doulas. And so in our efforts to be better advocates and to really just know how to advocate with intention and with the real type of narratives that we feel like just need to be heard. I'm a big believer that everyone's narrative, every woman's narrative, no matter what it sounds like, it's her narrative. And it is absolutely important to how we learn how to be better advocates and how we close those gaps. And I feel the same way about our providers and our holistic care providers and doulas. And so it is one of our biggest points of advocacy. It's one of the main things that we actually advocate for as holistic resources. And it is just very in line with what we're doing to be able to listen and just be that kind of fly on the wall, to just really hear exactly what you guys experience in real time and just take that in, and really just listen. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So what I really want to open the floor up to is I want us to productively vent. We've definitely had some challenging births, especially Priscilla and I, the last couple of births, had some things going on that were not cool as far as hospital behavior. I wish that Coral was here. Can we text Coral to see where the hell she is? And I'm really wanting us to have an opportunity, and Kathleen, who's done a bunch of births with me and seen a lot of shenanigans, this is a shenanigan conversation. Right. So we want to kind of highlight that, because those are the things that I don't think people really know or grapple with. And one of the things that is, what I want to just put out on the table first is when we are having these conversations about equity and everybody's agreeing that doulas are so important, and they are, no one's addressing the elephant in the living room, which is ACOG and the hospital system. So yes, doulas are really important because the system in which we're bringing our clients in to birth is wrought with peril. And the statistics clearly show that the darker the mom or birthing person is, the more in danger that person is. And I'm going to use that language because that's the reality, that person is imperiled going into the system that views physiological labor and birth as a sickness that needs to be treated. So the clash is always between the holistic health provider, be it a home birth midwife, because a good number of nurse midwives have that same mindset that birth is a sickness. So if you're a home birth midwife or if you're a holistically trained doula, there's always going to be this clash that nobody's talking about. And hence that leads into this kind of uneasy detente between doulas and the medical system. And where we are right now with COVID has given the doctors tremendous permission to just be able to block us out or limit our impact on our clients' care. There are hospitals where the doula has to sign a statement where that's saying that she will not in any way contradict the doctor. Alta Bates Hospital for one and Sequoia Hospital for another require that. So if our job is to help our clients advocate for their birth plans and to advocate for our client's birth plan, and if that is not what the doctor wants, then what does that mean for the doula? She's in violation of that. And the hospital is the gatekeeper. The hospital can say, we don't like you, you don't come back in. You know? So I like to open it up to especially the doulas who've worked with me and have seen a bunch of shenanigans. Now's the time to really lay it out and talk about that. You want to start, Priscilla, since you have the most recent births?
Sure. What was it, last week? I had a birth last week, Tuesday, and we walked into the clinic. Well, the client was actually really scared due to some personal stuff. So several times during the night on Monday night, because I slept over, she was ready to go to the hospital. She was so sure that this was it. And I managed to convince her each time, like, maybe let's wait a little, because honestly, she was laboring really well and she was able to take naps in between and stuff. I'm like, nah, you're not ready if you have a nice long sleeps in between. And then we mentioned, Samsara and I both mentioned the possibility of using the tub. And that really helped her. Like, she was just like in the tub, though she didn't want to get out. If tubs were a little bit more comfortable, she would have slept in there. But it's not. And she was feeling very weird trying to be in the tub and trying to get her belly all the way in the water. But ultimately, we made it through the night. And the morning came and she woke up and went right back into the tub. And everything was good. Everything was good. She was like, as long as I'm in the water, I feel really good. But I have a doctor's appointment at 10 today. And I'm like, okay, but you're already in labor. Like, do you have to go? I even called them and was trying to explain to them, like, you don't, you don't have to go in. You're already in labor. But she was like, oh, maybe we can just go to the clinic and then they can check me. I want to know exactly how far I am. So maybe we can go to the clinic and they can check me. And then if oh never mind, that's not helping. Sorry, I was thinking the light will help. If that if I'm not too far along, then I could come back home. And I was like, okay. So
we should say, excuse me for interrupting you. Let me just say, I think it's important to say that this client has had a pregnancy loss in the past.
Yeah.
So hence her nervousness and hence her desire to be checked, and that was driving this. Yes, Priscilla, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. So we drove to the clinic, which is not far from the hospital, apparently. It's minutes from the hospital. And she walked in. The only times I needed to hold her was like when it was really intense and she's like, I just need a support to rest on for a sec. She was walking, she was fine. She walked in on her own. The nurses were like, oh, you look like you're ready to pop. I'm like, okay. So the doctor came in and checked her. Well, they checked her blood pressure and the nurse was like, for somebody who's having contractions, this is pretty normal. A normal blood pressure. Went in, waited for the doctor. He came in and checked her and was like, I think you're 8. Yeah, I think you're 8 centimeters. Let me check again. Because sometimes it feels one way, but it might not be. So checked her twice and was like, yeah, you're 8 centimeters. I like, look at that. He wanted to go to the hospital early. We were all like celebrating, like, yay, 8 centimeters. The doctor was like, at this point, I think you should start heading to the hospital because you're 8 centimeters. If you go all the way back home, you might not make it back for delivery. So I was like, okay, let's go to the hospital. We get to the hospital, and the first security guard says, I cannot go in. We were all under the impression she can have 2 people, definitely a doula with her. But they said I couldn't get in. I was like, why not? Oh, well, you can't get in because only one person can go in. And we're like, no. It said 2. We checked. They said 2. They refused me going in. So by then they've already even like wheeled her off in a wheelchair. I'm like, she walked in here. Why y'all putting her in wait? But we did not even discuss that. But her husband was like, no, don't worry, Priscilla, I'm gonna get you in because you have to be with us. So we go all the way around. Well, we were standing there still trying to figure it out. And another security guard came in and said, oh, you have to go in through the front entrance. So you got to get back in the car and drive all the way around Sequoia to the front entrance. And then we get there and they're like, oh, have you been vaccinated? I said, no, but I get tested every week. And they asked me to show proof of that. I showed proof of that. And then there was also that document that was saying that health providers do not need to even show proof of vaccination or whatever, like they should be supporters, sorry. So I'm like, I'm a doula, I'm a supporter. I need to be in there with my client. And they're like, oh no, you don't have testing for this week. And I was like, yes, I get tested every Monday. And this particular Monday, I was with them laboring. And it's Tuesday morning. Like this was because her doctor's appointment was 10. So we got there like 10:30. So this started 10:30 to 11. I'm like, it's Tuesday morning. I haven't been anywhere but with them. Can I get in? And they're like, no, he can go, but you have to go find somewhere to get tested or get a rapid test, but you can't come in. And I was like, okay, but this is a state mandated law. Oh, we don't follow those rules. Like, you don't.
That is a documentation from the San Francisco, the California Board of Health, the health department has said that if someone's coming in with somebody into the hospital on an emergent scenario, either the family members of a birthing person, the doula specifically mentioned, if you're accompanying someone who's coming in who's in hospice, if you're accompanying a child, you should not even ask them. They should just go in because it's emergent. And the hospital is saying, oh, we don't follow that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, again, I want to apologize. It's really dark. I'm still in the car.
It's okay.
But yeah, so I had to step out and go. I had to leave. Well, at that point, the dad was like, she's in there by herself. I was like, I know, I don't want her to be in there by herself. You go, don't worry, I'll sort this out. Go be with her. And I had to leave the hospital. Well, first I was like, okay, where can I get tested? Can y'all do it here? They said, no, we can't test you here. I can't test me in the hospital. No, we can't test you here. Okay, where's the nearest place I can get tested, as far as y'all know? Because I'm assuming people come here and you might direct them to other places. And they're like, I don't know, maybe CVS or Walgreens. I don't know where the nearest one is. Google it. So I trust Google, and I go to 3 different stores to find a rapid test, because the first 2 are all out. And apparently there's signs now, like saying, due to how rapid these are going, you cannot purchase more than 4 at a time. And I'm like, okay. So the third one, I finally get a test, and I have to I sat right there in the parking lot and took the test and waited the whole 15 minutes to get my results and everything. And I rushed back down to the hospital, and they're like, oh, okay, now we can process you and register you so you can go in. Okay, so I get all that done, and I go up to labor and delivery. And the nurse up there is like, well, you got to show proof of vaccination or a test. I'm like, ma'am, this is how I got up here. They didn't let me get here until I have that. Why are you still Oh, you showed somebody? Yeah. Your security. Are y'all not communicating with each other? Like, I don't. Did you not know that's the rule downstairs, that you can't come up unless you show it? What is? Oh, I didn't know. I'm like, okay. Cool. Can I go in, please, to be with my client? Because I came in here with them. Oh, well, I have to go in and check if it's okay with the nurse for you to come in. And I'm like, but I came in here with, okay, ma'am, go check. Like, at that point, I didn't feel the need to even argue. I was just like, go check, because all I want to do is be in there with them. So I followed her. She wanted me to stay but I just kind of followed her to the door, because I didn't want to do that walk back, whatever. So she goes in and checks with the nurse that is in there, and the nurse is like, did she show proof of? I'm like, oh my God, what is wrong with you people? How many people do I gotta show proof to? But then she was like, oh, so I'm listening because I can hear, I'm at the door. She goes knocking on the bathroom door. Hey, your doula is here. Do you want her to be in here with you?
Oh my God. No, we don't want our doula who we requested to be here and came here with. Lord of
Yeah. That was,
meanwhile, the client's in transition.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, at that point, actually, because while I was waiting for the test to process, they texted and said she was checked and she's 9.5. So I'm sitting in the parking lot like, oh my gosh, she's 9.5. She's, the baby's gonna come anytime. And I get there, and they gotta go through steps for me to even get in the room. I'm just like, why? But the husband comes out and is like, yeah, she's using the restroom, but we came in here with her, so let her in here. Oh, I guess she can come in. I'm like, what are you guessing for? They just said, okay, no problem. So I walk in, and she's just like chilling. She was so calm. Hey, Priscilla, how are you?
Good for her.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that. I'm glad you made it up here. And like, I don't know anything that transpired before that, but I can't even ask like questions like that because the nurse is right there and would not leave. I'm like, okay. So she gets in the bed and gets checked again. And they're like, oh, yeah, you're 10. It's time to push. And she's like, really? Oh my God, exciting. She was so calm. So I'm excited for her because she had all this fear coming in to start with, and now she's just kind of like, oh my God, it's here, it's here, it's here. Um, well, we have to wait for the doctor to come from the clinic. So her doctor was supposed to be the same person. So they call the doctor at the clinic and let them know that she is ready to push and everything. So I guess the doctor tells them to keep him updated, and when she's super close to like baby coming out, he's gonna head down. Which I'm kind of like, what?
What is complete? Complete doesn't mean anything to him. Complete means complete.
Um,
This stuff
I
is
don't
not
know.
unusual. I just want you to know, Morgan. This is, this is our healthcare system. This is not even other doulas are nodding their head because these shenanigans. This is our daily basis. This is why we have so many C-sections. This is why we have so many people dying. It's baloney like this. Go ahead, Priscilla. Forgive me. You know how I am.
Oh, no worries. This is true. You speak in facts. So, um, yeah. So she starts to push, and she's like, honestly, I don't know how to push. Can y'all teach me? Like, can y'all talk me through it? And then she was like, I want to squat. I want to squat and push. But first, let me try all fours. So she tried all fours, and then she was leaning on the bed and pushing. And she was like, yeah, no, I wanna squat. Can I get a squat bar? Oh yeah, we can get you one. They brought one in. So she proceeds to squat in the bed, and like in a second, a split second, she stood up straight to kind of position herself. Oh no, you cannot stand in the bed. And I was like, no, she's down. She's down. She's squatting. Oh, but she can't be like that. She can't be like that. She can't stand in the bed because then we are liable for our. And she was like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stand in the bed. I just wanted to position myself right. Yeah, but you can't be like that. You can't be in that position. I'm like, she's squatting. You said she could squat.
It's a
She's
squat
squatting.
bar.
It's a squat bar. Exactly. And so this nurse is basically like, no, the squat bar. She went and got like a bed sheet and wrapped it around the squat bar. And she's like, well, you can sit on the bed and put your feet up here on the squat bar and hold on to the bed sheet and push. And I'm like, but she wants to squat. I
The
don't.
mother wants to squat.
So this nurse then, while she's doing that because the nurse says she has to. The nurse proceeds to like call like 5 different other nurses. Can you come in here and give her some tips on how to push? So we are just in there and she's trying to push, and then in comes in like a squad of nurses. We're like, who are all these people? And one of them was like, I'm so sorry I missed your call when you called me earlier. I was doing something. Oh, so what's the problem? I'm like, why are you all talking at once? She's trying to push. Like, ugh. Yeah, can you give her some tips on how to push? Has she tried all fours? Yes, she has. Has she done this? Yes, she has. Oh, well, I mean, one nurse was like, well, this is how I'll say it. How she's doing it is perfect. This is how I'll say it. But which is the way the first nurse said to do it, right? So I'm like, nope, no surprise, you're supporting your, your coworker. And then she's like, but like you need to push into your chest. And the mom did not know that. She admitted to, I don't know how I'm supposed to be pushing. So she's like, you need to push into your chest. And I kid you not, like this. I was like, did you just push her head down? Like in mid push, she was still pushing. You need to push your head down like this, and just pushed her head down. And I was like, my eyes just got really big. And I locked eyes with another nurse whose eyes was like really wide at that. She was like, but then when she saw me, she was like, I'm like, no, I saw your eyes. You knew what she did wasn't right. Like, don't try to act like you knew. Because your eyes got really wide at that action. And it's like, the mama was like so focused on pushing, like I don't think she even noticed in the moment what just happened, but I'm just standing there just dumbfounded. Like, you just pushed this woman's head down. It felt, I was telling Samsara later on the phone, it felt very rapey. It felt what I could relate to it, and just kind of putting a little bit of my own business out there, as a sexual abuse survivor. It felt like a dude forcing you to give him head. Like, that felt very rapey. And so I'm standing there, like, triggered for my own stuff and irritated for my client. And I'm just kind of like, so we're just gonna let that go. Okay. Like, I can't even get into it right now because I need her to be okay. I need her to be focused. And so the nurse that got really wide-eyed, she later on, she was like, she could actually just squat on the bed. And she's like, yeah, but she was like standing on the bed. I was like, only to like, that was the one time I was like, I'm gonna speak up because you're getting on my nerves. I was like, only to reposition herself. She didn't mean to. She didn't know. She's not gonna do that anymore. And the nurse was like, oh, the other nurse was like, well, if you lower this part of the bed, it will make it a lot easier for her to squat without her having to stand on the bed. And they did that, and the client was, oh yeah, this is so much better than before. Oh, I didn't know that she could do that, because I'm like, ma'am, you did not want her to squat. Just call it what it is. You want her to be on her back. You don't want her to squat. But, oh, you know what? I am so sorry. I really passed over something super important, and I apologize. When she got checked, the moment that they said she was 9.5, when she got checked, her water was still intact. She had, like, her water bag was still intact. It was not broken, nothing like that. So this nurse is checking her. And you could tell, I could see from what you could tell that she was done with this check. Because she was like, oh, you're about 9.5. And then proceeded to go deeper. And so that point, the client was very uncomfortable. She was like, ow, ow, like it hurts. Proceeded to go deeper, and then all you saw was just a gush of water. Oh, look at that. It looks like your water broke. I was like,
yeah, because you broke it.
And so I was dumbfounded, and the dad was looking at me like, I was like, yeah. So once the nurse stepped out, he was like, Priscilla, I had a question. Do you think the water broke on its own, or it was on purpose? I was like, my honest opinion, it didn't look like it broke on its own. That was very deliberate. So he was like, okay, cool. When the nurse came in, he was like, I got a question, ma'am. Did the water bag break on its own, or did you deliberately break it? You can never tell with these things, because it's just like, it could, I was just checking her cervix, and it could have just popped. You can never tell. It's either you did or you didn't. Which one is it? And the dad was still asking, like, okay, but do you think you broke it on purpose? Or was it? I just don't know. I can't really tell right now.
What does that mean?
I'm like, you just told. The fact that you're sitting here saying I can't tell, you just told, because if you didn't do it, you'd have said, no, I didn't do it. It's that simple. And he was just like, okay, please don't be doing stuff without our permission. Oh, but I did. It just, I don't know. It just broke on its own. This is the same nurse that didn't want her squatting in the bed. This is the same nurse that called 5 other people into the room. So I was just like really already very agitated with this nurse. But she was pushing, back to pushing. Sorry. Back to pushing. She pushed for about 2.5 hours. Oh, baby's still really high. Oh, baby's still really high. Baby's like -3. Baby's like -2, -3. So finally, well, at that point, she's exhausted. This nurse is just like, you look tired. Here, take some oxygen. And I'm like, She's breathing fine. She didn't request it. What are we doing? Oh, well, also the water bag broke. So, we should start you on your IV fluids. Oh my God. Like, and so they start her on that. She starts on the oxygen. Now she becomes really reliant on that. Like, she doesn't want to take a second without the oxygen.
Was
Like,
the baby
try to,
getting any distress on the monitor?
none.
This
The
is
only
that's
time
important
they
to
were,
know.
I'm sorry?
That's important to note.
Yes. Yes. The only time they were concerned about the baby was, they even admit, they were like, oh, we just can't read it because the monitor moved. And at that point, that nurse that said she could squat on the bed, she decided to stay around. So every time she would squat to push, the nurse will hold the monitor in place. And they're like, oh, we're reading it fine now. It's fine now.
So they're getting good readings on this infant. They're not
Great
acting
reading.
because the baby's in any kind of crisis. Just want to clarify
None.
that. Go ahead.
None whatsoever. They were saying that. They were like, baby's heartbeat is great.
Okay, good.
So then the doctor finally shows up after 2.5 hours of pushing. And actually, right before the doctor showed up, the mama was kind of like, can everybody be quiet, please? Because everybody's trying to give me instructions on how to push. I just need to hear one voice. Like, to a point where her husband touched her and she told her husband, babe, if you don't mind not touching me because it's too much sensory right now. Like, I can't focus. So then the nurse was like, well, who do you want to be talking to you right now? And she's like, Priscilla's been counting and she's doing great. Like, I just want to hear her count. And then at the end of the counting, I just want to hear my husband say, great job. And that's it.
What amazing presence this mama had. We just want to do that. That's amazing. What she's going through, to still have that presence of mind. That's beautiful.
Which, I mean, as you all are hearing, and I'm pretty sure that's very clear instructions.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts pushing. I'm counting, because in the hospital they just must count. So I'm counting, and the nurses, yeah, get mad, get angry, I'm just like, I'm like, ma'am, you heard her shut down her husband for touching her, and you want to be talking over her. I'm just like, what is wrong with you? Okay. I almost said the client's name. Okay. This is the time for you to get angry. Okay, you gotta push your baby down. Just push, just really hard. Be mad. I'm like, for what? Be mad for what? I don't understand. I'm mad for her because of you. Like, what is she supposed to be mad for? So I'm like talking in the client's ear, because before we came in, we had talked about that. I mentioned that example of going up the mountain and getting your baby. I'm like, we're so close. You're so close. You're right there at the top, right there. Just focus. That's all you need to focus on. Focus and get your baby. That's it. Yeah, like she was saying, focus, get angry. I'm like, please stop talking. So mama just like rolls her eyes and is trying to like tune her out, and she's still like, eh. So she looks at me, she's like, Priscilla. I'm like, I know. Just keep focusing. Please just ignore and focus. And then I looked at dad, like, so dad was like, babe, who do you want talking to you right now? And she's like, Priscilla. Okay, so only Priscilla should be talking, right? Okay, good. Okay, I'm just, I mean, I get that, and Priscilla can keep talking to you, but once in a while, maybe if I see you doing something you're not doing right, I have to tell you, and I'm just, it was very, very irritating.
And
And
even deeper than that is the counter of making oxytocin. Okay, so if the mom's wishes are being disrespected and her doula is being shut down, her doula who's appropriately doing her job, then the mom is going to feel stress, and the stress turns off the production of oxytocin, which is what she needs to push her baby out.
Exactly. And all this was happening after that lady that came in for a second and pushed down the client's head had came back and given me the doula forms that I have to sign.
And what do those forms say, doula Priscilla?
I don't have them with me, but basically that I cannot contradict anything that they say. It's okay if I hold the client's hand. It's okay if I support them emotionally, but that's the limits of what I'm supposed to be doing. I can't say anything that goes contrary to what any of them might have said. And so I'm just like, when she gave it to me, I didn't fill them out. She came back, she asked, have you filled them out? I'm like, no, because there's just all the stuff going on. Oh, she's fine, she's still pushing. Can you fill it? Can you fill them out? But I'm like, okay, yeah, look, I'm feeling it. Okay, I'm gonna be back for it. As soon as she left, I just tossed her somewhere and I just went back to what I was doing. And she didn't come back, thank goodness. So I wasn't worried about that. Somebody else did come in and was like, is there any paperwork I'm supposed to pick up from here? I was like, no, not that I know of. And like, she walked right out. I'm like, why are y'all coming in asking for all this stuff and this woman is pushing?
Woman is pushing.
When the doctor shows up, he checks and he's like, oh yeah, baby's at -4. I remember this because I remember texting Samsara's like, the baby's coming backwards. Like,
the baby's
what?
going back up? Yeah, what's that about?
Oh, baby's at -4. So, and this is what really I caught later, Samsara, is that this is the doctor that they've been seeing for a very long time. And he's like a nice old old man. And they really trust him. The mama really trusts them because they're like, because of one conversation they had really where they're like, he's a really conservative doctor, but on this particular appointment, he was honest with us. He was like, I would want you to get induced. However, it's your choice and you don't have to. And so because of that statement, they were like, oh, we trust this doctor 100%. Everything he says, because he didn't force induction on us. So we trust him 100%.
Okay.
So when I made that connection, because when the doctor came in and was like, honey, sometimes we've done everything we can and babies just don't want to come down. And your baby doesn't want to come down. And I was like, have we done everything we can? Have we? Y'all have not let her stand up on her feet. Y'all not even letting her squat on the bed at some point. Like, have we done everything we can? So I'm saying this to the dad, and he has been listening to me at every point, but at this particular point, it's like he's ignoring me because, again, it's coming from the doctor. They trust this doctor. So I'm just like, okay. So the doctor was like, so what I can do is I will highly recommend that you get the epidural. And what the epidural is going to do is just relax all your muscles.
Excuse me. Go ahead, baby. I'm sorry.
It's like, it's going to relax all your muscles. And once it does that, baby should come down. Like, I can tell within minutes of getting the epidural whether or not the baby will come down. I could tell within minutes. So let's get the epidural and we'll see where it goes from there. I'm like, okay. And the mom was just like, I'm tired. So sure. So the doctor leaves 5 to 10 minutes later. And we all know how long it takes for those anesthesiologists to come up. 5 to 10 minutes later, the anesthesiologist is already in there. And I'm like, oh, you was waiting outside. Like, you were waiting outside. They already decided. I mean, we all know they decided this before, but they really just set everything up before coming in here. So, and I'm like, it's only been 2.5 minutes. I mean, 2.5 hours. People push for way longer than that, like 2.5 hours. But they come in, and of course they kick me out because only one person can be in there. So I'm sitting in the waiting room, and then the doctor comes, and he's on the phone with another patient or whatever. And then he sees me in there, so he comes and sits with me. And he's like, I know. It's really bad. It's sad. It's sad because she was doing so great. And it's just, baby doesn't want to come down. Baby doesn't want to come down. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to just summon my little courage, and I'm going to ask you a question. I know you're already lying on some stuff, but I'm going to ask you a question and see how you answer it. So I'm like, I'm just so curious, doctor, just from my knowledge, just so I know, because I'm still learning. I'm a doula, I'm just learning. The nurse earlier was checking her, and then like the water broke. And like, in your opinion, do you think that could have been like a deliberate thing? And also, do you think that because the water broke early, it could have affected baby coming down in any way? Oh, no. It has no effect on it. None whatsoever. But also, like, it's whether or not it was deliberate, these things just like happen. I'm sure she didn't mean to break it. It just, she probably was just checking, and it broke. But like, no, the water breaking if anything, the water breaking should have brought baby down faster. So because we do that all the time. We recommend breaking the bag of water all the time to get the baby down faster. So if the baby did not come down, it has nothing to do with when the bag was broken. Like, it has nothing to do with it whatsoever. It can't have any effect.
If the mom had been allowed to be upright the way she wanted, or squatting the way she wanted, and that baby came down further and the water broke on its own because the hormone levels are high enough to allow all that to happen, yes, she would have got a big burst of hormones, and I would have helped the baby come down. But with all the kerfuffle that was going on around her, and all the stress, and all the having to correct nurses, and all the things that were going on around her, just breaking the bag of water just kind of pisses away that big burst of hormones that could have helped bring her baby down.
No. And I will say, there was a little bit of, there was some meconium in the water, like in the amniotic fluid. But of course, that was look, there's meconium in there. So it's a good thing that your water broke.
Again, the baby in any kind of crisis?
None. So I just kind of like, I'm talking to this doctor, and then he straight up tells me, he's like, I can tell within minutes, maybe 2 minutes of getting an epidural if the baby's gonna come down or not. So I'm just gonna give her a chance after the epidural to push like one good time, and then like, yeah, I think we both know it has to be a cesarean. We both know, and I'm just like, okay.
No, sir, we both don't know.
It's like, okay. So I was like, so she gets the epidural and she gets to sleep, and then she tries pushing. Oh, you don't know. I'm just gonna go in after they're done with the epidural, and then and yeah. I'm like, so y'all not even gonna give her time for it to kick in? What is going on? So they call me in. The dad, because the nurse was like, I'll come get you once the epidural is in. I'm sitting there. So dad like eventually texts me like, hey, I don't know if they came to get you, but they've been done. I'm like, okay. I go in, and there's like some blood on the floor, and I guess dad didn't see and stepped in it from when the epidural was being inserted or whatever. So dad is like, oh, it looks like a murder scene on the floor, because now there's blood everywhere. And I'm like, and he's like, it looks like a crime scene. And I'm like, yeah, well, it is. Like it is a crime scene. Because what they're doing is not right. What they're doing is definitely a crime against y'all. But but I can't say that to him right now. So I'm just thinking in my head, and I'm like, it is a crime scene, not in the way you're thinking it, but it is, and it's wrong. But it's okay. So I walked to the mom. Well, it's not okay, but it
Right.
have to be okay in the moment. So I walked up to the mom and she's like, oh, so tired. I can finally sleep. She closes her eyes and the doctor walks in. Also, we're gonna let you try pushing again. And she's like, I wanted to take a nap. No, no, we're gonna try you pushing again. And she pushed, the usual 1 to 10 hold, 1 to 10 hold 3 times. So she pushed. It's not looking good. It's not looking good. And I texted, because again, I can't speak to them freely the way I want to. So I texted the dad. This whole time I've been texting the dad everything I have to say. And I made sure he had his phone with him, because I was like, hey, can you keep your phone just in case I'm sorry text and I miss it. So if anything happens, I just text him. So I texted him. I was like, I'm going to let you know right now, this is what the doctor told me in there. And that is not enough time. So just so you know. So he was like, oh, so now she gets to rest? After reading that, he's like, she gets to rest? And he's like, no, we're just going to push a couple more times and see. So instead of that one good push, he said he gave her like 3 chances. Like Saint, he gave her 3. And then he's like, yeah, no, but baby's still not moving. And you are using the right muscles. Like all the nurses that came in, they were praising her. You are pushing so well. You're using the right muscles. The baby's just not moving. Baby's just not moving. So I know it's discouraging, but you did everything that you could do. Baby just doesn't want to come down.
So it's the baby's fault.
So C-section. And then the nurse, stupid nurse. The stupid nurse from the background. And C-section is not the worst thing that could happen. A C-section is not the worst thing. I'm just like, shut up. Just shut up. Please be quiet. So then the mama, she starts crying. And I'm just kind of like, it's not you. It is not you. You need to remember, it's not you. Stop trying to blame yourself. This is not it. It's not you. You were great. You were really great. You were awesome.
Really
you
was.
still are awesome. And like just trying to like talk her spirits up. And this nurse is like, again, like I said, the C-section is not the worst thing. Okay.
C-section is not the worst thing if you need a C-section.
Dad kind of like, you could tell he was really emotional and kind of sad, but he held it together and held his partner's hand and was calm with her. And then they came and did what they needed to do to prep her and wheeled her out. And then she came back in. I mean, I got to go into the recovery space when baby was born, and I was with them for a while. She wasn't able to hold the baby for a long while because she had, she was shaking from all the medication. She had the shakes, and then the nurse was like, well, it doesn't look like you have a fever, but you're shaking. And that sometimes happens with the epidural. So I'm going to go order some more medication to counteract the fact that you're shaking, even though the shakes was caused by the medicine. I'm just kind of like, okay. And she was just so exhausted, honestly. The medicine was still having its effect. She was like drowsy and everything. So Dad basically had the baby for the longest time, for the majority of the time. I told him to stay with the baby for all the procedures that they needed to do. But before I left, I made sure, one, she was able to hold her baby, and then two, that she had started breastfeeding, like baby latched and everything. So baby was able to breastfeed on both breasts for about 30 minutes each.
Great.
And I stayed with her for a while. Then I kept asking the whole time I was in the recovery room, like the second I walked into the recovery room, actually, I asked about the placenta.
So
And
we're going to do placenta encapsulation just to explain the backstory on that. So the
yeah,
mom was going to have her placenta encapsulated. Go ahead.
yeah. And they didn't, the dad didn't know. Of course, mom didn't know. And the nurse that was there wasn't really responding because he's pediatrician, like he's pediatric. So he was like, So the other nurse later on was like, oh, that the placenta is in the freezer. They need to keep it for 24 hours in case something happens to baby. So if they want to observe the baby for 24 hours, if everything is fine, the placenta will be free to be released. But if not, then they're gonna take the placenta to get examined.
So I just
So
want to say, like, in 41 years, it's the first time I'm hearing of the hospital doing that. Mika shaking her head also, who's also a very experienced doula.
yeah, I was quite surprised too. I was like, but is there any indication that there's something wrong with the baby? No, we just want to, wait and see. And I'm like, okay. But then the nurse, she was I'm like, what is up with the nurses in this place? That nurse was also trying to discourage them from placenta encapsulation because she kept bringing, oh, but there was meconium in there. There was meconium. Are you sure you can use it? There was meconium in there. I'm like, the problem here, and at that point I was texting Mika to see, how she felt about them holding it for 24 hours. And I was like, but the problem here is not the fact that there's meconium in there. I'm making that very clear. First of all, I'm not even having a conversation with you. I'm having with my clients. Why are you in our business? But the problem here is not the fact that there's meconium in there. The problem is that it's going to be held here for 24 hours and we don't know what could contaminate it. That is the problem. Oh, nothing's going to contaminate it. We'll keep it in the freezer. And if everything is fine with baby, then we don't need to check it.
The placenta is food. It's being processed as food. So in order for Mika, who's our placenta encapsulator, to be able to work on that placenta, it needs to, the chain of evidence of that placenta has to be like from the mom right to the encapsulator. Hanging it out in some place where we don't know the conditions, we can't see it, Mika can't verify it. If she processes that placenta and the client becomes ill, they're going to go, see, this is why you shouldn't encapsulate your placenta. And we also want to know that hospitals sell the placenta. So the hospital is holding on to money and denying that human being per organ and the benefits of consuming that organ.
Yeah. And they had them sign a placenta release form. And it's like, so you want her to come pick it up? Like, yeah, that's why we're having this conversation. And so she's like, okay, well, you got to put her name on here and you got to sign that you are allowing her to come pick up your placenta. And I was like, okay. So that was done. Eventually I left pretty late. Again, we walked into the hospital at like 11 a.m. and I left around 10:30 p.m. From the hospital. And so then the next day I checked in with them about.
Before we go on to the next day, let us just have a moment to thank you for some extraordinary doula service.
Thank you.
You were on point every step of the way, on point for your client. Love you. Outstanding. Outstanding. And I wanted to share that my beautiful doula daughter called me and we had a good cry together, did we not?
Yes,
After
we
that
did.
birth. She's standing in a parking lot trying to find her car, weeping for her client because she's a good doula and she cares and she gave 150%. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next day.
Next day, yeah, now Hollywood. Next day, I called them to check in about the placenta because I had to go to work, so I wasn't able to go since Sequoia is so far. I wasn't able to go, earlier to go pick up. So I was like, hey, if I'm gonna drive there in the middle of the night to come get the placenta, I need to know it's ready so I can come pick it up and put it in your freezer, because we had already discussed if Mika can't process it after 24 hours of it being in the hospital, you can think about, burying it or, planting it. And so they were leaning towards planting it. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna come pick it up and put in the freezer until you come home. And then when I called and checked in, the dad was like, oh yeah, they they referred us to another placenta encapsulator who was okay with processing it after 24 hours. The thing then is that they did in fact test the placenta, even though nothing was wrong with the baby, and they found a stress hormone. So it's so good.
They found a stress hormone. I wonder why. And what does that have to do with encapsulating it? Nothing.
I don't know. But Dad, I guess the way they explained it to Dad was like, oh, well, because then it's a good thing that they found it, because then if it was encapsulated, then if she takes it, the stress hormone is going to be all in her system.
No.
And that's what the other placenta encapsulator told them. So yeah, we think we're gonna bury it and plant a tree. I'm like, okay, that was the plan anyway, because we couldn't do it. But the fact that this is your reason why, is like BS, and they're lying to you. But it's like, he was just like, yeah, no, they explained it. And my doctor said, and honestly, the second he said, my doctor said, I just was like, there's no point in explaining to you. I've observed that once your doctor says something and I say something, it doesn't process. You only listen to your doctors. I'm just like, God, let me not even stress myself, because I'm already angry enough for everything else they've done. Like, I can't even.
A doctor who has no training in placenta encapsulation does not know anything about it.
Oh, side note, because I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. You know how she was saying she was seeing a chiropractor?
Mm-hmm.
It is the doctor's wife. The doctor's wife is the chiropractor. So, yeah, I found out when we got to the clinic. So I was like,
wow.
Everything just seemed real shady, but okay.
So just to point out, the continuity of that is that we have a chiropractor. We have a couple of really great chiropractors that we recommend to our clients, so we know the babies fall out of these moms when you go to the chiropractor, go to these chiropractors. So twice the family was steered away from our recommendations of providers of encapsulation and chiropractic into someone who's in the medical model. And clearly the encapsulator is not well trained.
Yeah. According to Dad, the encapsulator was like, the fact that it was held for 24 hours is not the problem. The problem is the fact that there's some stress hormone that they found in there. So
that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
But altogether, baby was healthy.
What kind of baby?
Baby girl.
Baby girl.
A long baby girl, 20 inches.
Very,
I,
very nice. Since this is being recorded, we will not say the baby's name. Usually we do want to lift up our babies. We'll lift them up anyway. We just won't say it. So let's have a moment to welcome sweet little baby into this world. Bless her mom and dad. Bless her community. May she grow up to be, to bring honor to herself, to her parents and her community. Walk in love and light always. And bless their doula. Anything that you want to say in closing, Priscilla? I hate to be timekeeper, but I am. I do want some more things here.
Yeah, no, I'm really, that is the account of it all. And in all honesty, I'm still pissed and I'm still mad and upset and emotional and everything about it. And I still have a little bit more cry to do because it's very infuriating, and it's a lot more infuriating feeling like you can't do anything. Even though I knew I was doing everything I could do, it just felt like I want to stop this and I can't. And it's just sad. It's really sad. But and then I think a nurse was like, I mean, the most important thing is that we have a healthy baby and a healthy mom.
Oh,
Which pissed me off some more. So altogether, I went to a birth and then it was beautiful and then it got really shitty and then I was upset. That's it. That's the whole total of it.
well, the best part is, I mean, we are grateful that there's a beautiful live baby, but the bar has to be higher than just nobody died. We're grateful that nobody died, but the bar of what is acceptable for a human being coming into, leaving its mother's body and coming to be with us on planet Earth fully shouldn't be more than, well, you didn't die, so we're all just lucky you didn't die. We're all just so, don't ask for any more. So I'm looking at the time, and Kathleen, I want to jump to you. Mika had a smooth, beautiful home birth, so we'll talk about that later. Maybe if we have time, we'll talk about it to cleanse our palates. Let's see how we do. But we have had a couple of experiences with a nurse midwife in one of our hospitals, and I would love you to just kind of give skeleton what was going on with this particular person that was so offensive.
Well, I'll start with, I want to start with the last birth that happened with her. And this was a family that ended up transferring from the San Francisco birth center. They transferred to UCSF, and she said, "Oh, I'm gonna like get to," how did she phrase it? I forgot how she phrased it, but it was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get to like be a midwife. Like, oh, I'm gonna get to give you guys this birth center experience like a midwife." I'm like, you are a midwife.
Nurse midwife, right.
And she's like patting herself on the back, giggling about how she's like giving them this birth center experience, that she's putting extra effort forth for them to have this experience. I'm like, you should be doing this every single time. This is standard of care. And shut your face. This woman really, so like, that's her attitude. That's her attitude about herself as a midwife and her practice. And she's, pretending. that family worked really hard, and then this midwife got to pat herself on the back like she did such a phenomenal job. I have such a problem with folks, Priscilla, nurses, midwives, people in the birthing space who don't know how to be quiet, who don't know how to listen when the birthing person or their partner is like asking for like quiet. And this is a provider who doesn't know the meaning of the word. It just makes me enraged. But that birth came after other interactions with her. There was a birth that I supported. The mom had been working really hard for multiple days, got lots of acupuncture, was doing, I don't know that she did chiropractic, I don't remember, but
She didn't.
you know, she had a nice sized baby. Her baby got into kind of a funky position. She tried many different things. Because baby was in kind of a funky position, this is my observation of her laboring.
Right.
It was taking a lot to get like a really steady labor pattern. And she worked with her partner to do nipple stimulation and progressed her labor, and per her dilation, she got to, I think she got to 9.5 with nipple stimulation being like this constant thing. And she kept being discouraged by the nurses. She had one nurse who was like suggested it, and then another nurse who was like, well, I can't say that, and an OB, well, I can't recommend that, and that's just going to make you so tired, and oh, you're just going to be exhausted. And so then here comes this nurse midwife who comes on, this same nurse midwife who pretends to be a midwife when she feels like it. And she's like, oh, I'm just worried you're just going to be so tired. You're just going to be so tired. You're just going to be so tired. Well, if you would leave her alone and stop prodding her and stop coming in and stop turning on the lights and stop being loud.
And stop hypnotizing her, saying the word tired over and over. Tired, tired, tired.
So when it got, see at this, I don't know that I have, like, I don't know that I have all my, I'm like, I have my notebook here. I don't remember. Did she end up having an epidural?
My memory of it was that she, well, the egregious part was either for the epidural or the Pitocin, she was being coerced to having either one or both.
Yeah.
And then when she finally got broken down, the midwife said something even more egregious to her.
Oh, yes. So she was at 9.5 centimeters, or like, I think there was just a lip.
A little.
She got beyond 9.5, and they just said that there was like this little lip, and, you know, nipple stimulation just won't sustain your labor. It's just not going to sustain you through these contractions and for pushing out your baby. You just, nipple stimulation just isn't going to sustain this. You're going to be too tired. And you really, you know, and the client's like, I've been doing this with my partner. I'm not tired. Well, you know, you're just going to be too tired. We just, you know, you just need some Pitocin. You just need some Pitocin to just keep things going and get them really strong so you can just have this baby. So they badgered her and badgered her and badgered her to the point of giving her Pitocin. When then she was like at 10 centimeters, right at about to be 10 centimeters. Was it 10 centimeters? Then she's like, well, let's see how you do at pushing. I just can't even.
The nurse
Priscilla,
before,
your story.
when she agreed to have the Pitocin, what did the nurse giggle and say?
No, so that was with her pushing.
Okay.
Yeah, that was with her pushing. So she's like, well, let's see how you do with pushing. So the nurse midwife leaves. They had another nurse who came on who was trying to help with positioning, and this client was like all about trying lots of different positions. And I feel like she did have I just found my notes in here. I don't see whether she had an epidural, but I feel like
I don't believe she had an epidural. I think the coercion was around the Pitocin.
Yeah. So anyhow, she tried lots of different positions for pushing. She pushed for, it was coming close. I think it was like after 2 hours, 3 hours, she got close to 4 hours, but didn't get to 4 hours. But the midwife kept coming back and just was very forceful and aggressive with her checks, forceful and aggressive with oh, let me put pressure and push into my hand, oh, to make sure you're pushing effectively. Well, I just don't know. I think, sometimes we just have to use forceps. And mom, she scared the shit out of mom. Mom got this terrified look on her face, looking at her partner. We talk about all interventions with childbirth ed. We, provide all of this information, and forceps are not like the go-to. And here the nurse midwife uses it as the go-to. And, so then the mom's like, well, I'm not fucking gonna use, excuse my language, forceps. Nobody's gonna use forceps on my baby. So then she's like, pushing even harder than she was already pushing, because she's already giving it everything that she has, because there's this drill sergeant yelling at her to push. And then the midwife's like, oh, see, that's a great push. That's great. And then she was like, okay, you guys continue pushing. So she leaves the nurse to help her continue to push. And then she turns to me and giggles. Like Samsara said, just sometimes you just have to say forceps to get them to do, to do what you need them to do to motivate them. And she was like, I was like, I'm so glad I'm wearing a mask, so you do not see my fangs. And if I had flaming darts shooting out of my eyes, it would have stabbed her. Oh my God. I just couldn't, her laughing about it, and so
it's a joke.
It's a joke, and being abusive, like threatening physical abuse as a motivator. Like you were saying before, Samsara, you're in this moment, and here you want a baby to work with its birthing mom, birthing person's body to be born. You want the mom, in this case, to work with her baby, her hormones to be working in sync with her baby, to birth her baby in this oxytocin, and you're gonna threaten abuse on her. That's gonna shut that down.
Right.
That has her being in this like intense, fearful, bringing her baby forth out of fear.
It's cruel.
It is. And that she laughed, that she thinks that that's like a funny thing, just was just outrageous. I was disgusted. I was so disgusted. And
it's also very interesting in both of these stories that we have medical provider colluding with the doula. Like, you're supposed to giggle with her, and Priscilla's supposed to agree with the doctor that we did everything we could,
Yeah. And I think that was probably my face, like, and then I like turned and focused my energy, reminding her what an incredible job she's doing, reminding her, that she's going to be welcoming her baby in. And, she pushed for a considerable amount of time. Her baby was in a funky position. They also couldn't figure out what position her baby was in. How many people had their hands up in there and couldn't agree to what position the baby came in. And when the baby was born, they were like, oh, the baby's whatever. When the baby was born, cone head totally to the side.
Yeah.
Totally to the side. Yeah. Which was not the position any of them were saying the baby was in. Which was like, clearly the baby's anyhow. And because they're having her barrel and they're having her, towards the end, really more flat on her back, the OB comes in. They have a movement, a position that they named after the OB, and the nurse midwife is like, oh, this is her position. Oh, she's going to come in. Oh, like she was giggling because she's clearly in awe of this OB. She should just be an OB, not be pretending to be a midwife, like she said she was pretending to be a midwife. But mom had some pretty significant tearing, and
she forced the asynclitic head out of her body.
Yeah.
So that's a wide part.
Because they wouldn't just give time for adjustment. They had to use fear. Because then she's like, I wasn't going to let my baby be born with forceps. So she's like, I need to get that baby out. Like, that was her thinking. That was her mentality. And it wasn't the mentality she had wanted to have to birth her baby. And she was upset about that. And I was upset about that. And I shared with them later what the midwife had said to me. Because that was not okay. It was not okay. And unfortunately, her partner's demeanor kind of changed because the nurses are there. And so then like the counting became like 1, 2, 3, like it was like quite jarring, which wasn't the energy that we had going and wasn't the energy that she had wanted. Yeah, it was really infuriating. It was really, really infuriating. And then afterwards, baby was having a hard time breathing.
Wonder why.
And
poor little head got schools, and so
yeah. And then just the look, just like pushing to get baby out. Baby gets barreled out, and you know, mom they both look terrified. Yeah. And then and then the midwife, that midwife like left right at the end, and this other midwife came in to stitch her. It was very odd. And the OB came in and out, and then was like, oh, see, it was my move. It was my move that like got your baby out. Oh, you know, it was just so gross. And it felt, it felt, Priscilla, I think your word of like rapey. Like, I'm going to threaten you with this. And they kept like adjusting her bed up and down and up and down and up and down. Like let the woman be in the position she's wanting to be in to push. And then be like, you liked it.
Mhm.
That's how it felt.
Yeah. So take a deep breath, Kathleen, because you're not lion of a doula. Take a deep
But then
breath.
I was, you know, like Priscilla said, then turn from the nurse midwife, trying to help just be the grounding, calm. Client looks up at me, and I just radiating, using all my energy to radiate like love and calm and positivity and quiet. Like, even if everybody else is going to be like, like, you're doing so good. You're right. You know, you're right there. So we talked a lot about the marathon and the mountain too, Priscilla. Like, you know, you're going to meet him. Yeah. But yeah, that feel like there was some other instance with that nurse midwife that I can't remember.
Yeah, there was another client, but we're out of time. But
yeah,
thank you for everything that you have shared and everything that you have done. And again, sterling doula support from you. So definitely want to give you a big round of applause for that. And it's important that we do that. And also remind everybody about self-care, crying, hot baths, chiropractic, acupuncture for the doula. Because there are times when we are witnesses to crime scenes. We are. And everybody in the room is smiling and laughing, and we know what happened. And so it is very important that we take very good care of ourselves. We have circle where we can process how that all felt and try to let it go, get back into our own lives. As much as we participate in our client's story, it's their story. It's not our story.
And just as a caveat, like I discussed this all with Samsara, and I'm texting away with Samsara.
Mm-hmm.
And like, oh my effing G, can't believe this just happened and was said. But also, you know, processing what was said and when it was appropriate to discuss it with the client. Like, you know, it's not like we talked about it right away.
No, that's usually not a good idea unless the client wants to. If the client brings it up, then I would, but usually actually, you know, we wait until the baby's like a month old before really processing the birth. You know, and we process it according to the client's ability to receive information. So we don't give them, you know, if the client is not wanting to break everything down to its minutia, then we don't. I've had clients call me when their kid's 10 years old saying, can I talk about my birth with you? Because they're ready now. And I go get my notes and break it down. It's not about us. It's what's right for them. So, Miss Morgan, still there?
Yes, I am. I was actually making a cup of coffee because I was taking notes and I was like, oh, I may need a little more juice.
I totally feel you. I envy you. I've recently has had coffee taken out of my life, darn natural path, and I miss my late night cups of coffee so much. But in any case,
Yeah, I was walking around with my computer, so I didn't want you guys to think I was being weird. I apologize. I just ran back and up.
No worries. We do all kinds of things on camera. It's kind of cute. Making family dinner and eating. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to ask those questions if you wanted to before we close. We've got 9 minutes.
Well, I was gonna say that from our perspective, it's fascinating almost because everyone has a different perspective as to what they see as disparities in this space. And so as I'm listening to it, what it feels is exhausting it seems like to a degree, because at every point, at multiple points, you're being tested. It felt so frustrated, and these aren't even people I know personally, and I felt very conflicted because I wanted to be like, oh my God, I want to just strangle that nurse. So it's definitely a testimony to how strong you all are in your work and what it takes to be that support system in that kind of a space. It's very different from what we see because we are the 501c4 of this issue. So we're very rowdy. We are like, if you've ever seen Key and Peele, we are like the angry Obama. Okay, you're that version. Yeah. So we like to sit there and really rant and rave. And so this was very educational for our organization because it kind of gives us an idea as to the personality or the temperament that I think you all have in your work and the poise that comes with it, and maybe how to carry that same type of attitude into advocating for you all. I was going to ask you, and this is obviously for every single person here, in your work and when you're dealing with providers, do you find that there are differences when you are dealing with providers of color? So if you're a doula of color, do you find that dealing with providers of color, there's any type of camaraderie and for everyone else?
Not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. In fact, I think the care gets a little worse. We have to watch the internalized suppression piece. That is my solid opinion on that I take a deep breath when I see a provider of color walk in the room. I take a deep breath and I hope for an ally, but it is not guaranteed at all. At all.
When a lot of the things that we're working on now is accountability for our organization and providing more accountability for moms and families. One of the, I know I can't imagine, but I can only think is probably the worst experience. This is when you lose someone you're caring for, when you lose an infant. If you guys feel comfortable sharing that with me, I mean, what I'm going to ask, that please feel free, but if you don't, I completely understand. But I kind of wanted to know, I guess, when you're in those situations where you feel like they have severely dropped the ball and now we're at this catastrophic, devastating end to what could have been preventable, what steps do you feel like you've taken or you take to help yourself and even help those families, if you're comfortable sharing that?
Well, fortunately, in my direct practice, I've only had one infant death. And that's an over 1,000 baby. So I'm ahead of the curve by that. And so in that case, if there's an infant death that I'm helping the family to support, I support them in planning the memorial. I make sure that they know they can get their baby's body, depending upon if it's a miscarriage or stillbirth. Helping them to be connected with the funeral directors who will process. Not all funeral directors will take a little baby. So knowing which funeral parlors will be able to help them, be kind and supportive to them in planning services for their baby. families who don't have a church home, finding some other way to have their spiritual needs respected, or helping them to develop brand new needs that they didn't even think they'd ever have to have because they didn't think they'd ever have a baby that died. So the goal, the role of the doula continues past the birth, whatever that birth is, be that a stillbirth or not, or a miscarriage or not. So is that what you were leaning towards?
Well, that's just, so one of the things I was like listening to when y'all were sharing your stories was their attitude of, we just barely made it, so that's great. Like kind of this attitude of like, well, she's alive, so we should just be happy. And so that led me to kind of think, I wonder how you know, just I guess, what do doulas maybe need in that space? What would be like, I know this sounds kind of like a dream question, but it's really not.
I mean, our prayer is to get them home as quickly as possible. Hopefully the baby doesn't need to be in NICU or anything like that. And then offering chiropractic, offering craniosacral adjustments for the baby with the asynclitic head. You know, that poor kid got shot out of there. A kid that was born through vacuum needs craniosacral therapy after it's born. Making sure the parents know that this is available, because these things will never be mentioned to them by any medical person whatsoever.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
While talking about physical therapies, there's physical therapists that specialize in the perineal area and damage after a childbirth, and making sure if the client wants that and needs that she's clued into that. We bring herbs to the clients after the birth. So if there's a lot of stitches, the mom can soak her perineum in the appropriate herbs to facilitate healing.
Yeah.
And I want to say that we're a very special doula practice. Not all doulas do all this.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've met some different kind of groups, and so that's why I like to learn your style, your particular style of how you care. Do you guys find in the work that you've been doing in Oakland and in that area, do you experience that with a lot of hospitals, the paperwork barrier, or that being one of the many barriers that they kind of throw at you? It's so concerning that they are going rogue from what the state is obviously saying, right? So is that a very normal thing that is just happening? We've kind of just accepted that's normal, even though we know it's not, right?
We expect shenanigans from our medical people. Okay, we expect them to work to counter physiological birth. Almost everything they do stops physiological birth and can put babies in crisis and can set up moms to have birthing people to have postpartum complications. Everything they do makes that happen.
Yeah, it seems insane that they're making people sign waivers to not go against the doctors. Does it say in those documents the list of things, or is it just kind of simplistic where you just against the doctor?
Priscilla broke it down very well.
Yeah,
we can get you the exact paperwork, but to my knowledge, there's only 2 hospitals that are that brazen. I won't say them on camera because we're taping, but I will say to the YouTube afterwards. One of our local hospitals is a notorious horrible hospital and has been doing it for quite some time. And that was pre-COVID. I don't know about the situation with hospital 2, of telling the doula that you cannot contradict the doctor. I mean, what is that?
Yeah. That's so vague. That's so crazy. Well, I'm saying this a lot to say it. I'm asking these questions because, and I was telling Samsara this, I've worked in government for over about 10, 12 years now, and I've worked in Congress and I've worked in the Senate, and I was very fortunate to have worked for Congressman Lewis when he was here, which is quite an honor for me. Thank you. And I ended up moving to California to work for Senator Harris. And so now that and working with them on this issue, now getting into the private space of advocating for it, one of the things that we try to do in carving out policy work and making the policy better is expanding and broadening exactly the barriers, right, that we know are a part of the red tape, I believe, right? So when we hear that they're giving you paperwork, when we hear that they're making you run upstairs, right, and now all of a sudden they don't know where to get COVID testing when that's literally a pandemic, that's just crazy. That was so crazy when she said that. So I'm sorry. I cannot believe, it's insane to me that they told you they didn't even know where to send you for testing. So what that does is that, like you were saying, Samsara, it helps us capture what probably most of the doulas in Northern California are facing.
Absolutely.
Like, that is exactly how we geographically kind of break down issue areas, right? And so to know that it's gotten to be that nuanced in how they've built out the barriers kind of helps us find those nuances in the literature and the policy to then take it out, right? So this is really helpful just to listen for so many reasons, but more importantly, because I didn't really recognize just the nuanced layers of the barriers that they put in place, right? I can't imagine being a mom. I can't imagine the moms we advocate for being in these positions with their doula and having no voice. I cannot fathom
having their voice scared out of them.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's that social devaluation piece, the very passive social devaluation that's exactly what it is. I was gonna say, if you guys felt like there was something that could be in that room with you that could then help you on your end, what would that maybe look like? I know
it would require a complete re-education of how doctors are trained in this country.
Yeah.
And we need more actual, authentic midwives. Our nurse midwives, and we're the only country that has nurse midwives. The rest of the world just has midwives. Okay. So in this country, you have to be an RN first. You go through, you get your RN, which is a completely different practice, by the way. And then you do some midwifery training, and then you're a nurse midwife. Okay. So in the rest of the world, they're midwifery. In London has the Royal College of Midwifery, and you go in and all you're studying is how babies leave their parents' bodies. That's all they're studying there. We're not talking about sickness. Okay. Home birth midwives, their training is three plus years of nothing but physiological birth, nothing but what's normal, how normal functions, what it smells like, tastes like, the sounds the mothers make, and how it's different for every human person going through this experience. It will not be exactly the same, but it's still normal, right? It's a much more grounded in the reality of birth training than any of the other practitioners get. And so, of course, ACOG has been working really hard trying to get rid of home birth midwifery in this country. And here in the Bay Area, we have more nurse midwives than other places in the country. But those people are still getting the training that pregnancy is a sickness. About 6 months ago, we had a client told by one of our prestigious Bay Area hospitals, African-American mother was told by an African-American practitioner, pregnancy is a disease. The treatment is the birth of the child. You were there for that, definitely. That's what this African-American doctor said to her African-American client.
Was that the same doctor who said that there was no benefit?
There was no benefit
to be in utero beyond 39 weeks.
There's no benefit to a child being in its mother's body beyond 39 weeks. Because the big push right now is to induce everybody. As early as 37 weeks, they start to push them to be induced. And these are healthy pregnancies. These are pregnancies that have had no issue beforehand, no high blood pressure, nothing. And induction is a massive assault on the body massive, involving several different medications, and it could last days. You can be in the hospital. The longest induction we had was like 8 days, almost 9, ending in a C-section. And they treat it like it's nothing, like it's pulling a tooth. So
If you had
go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna say, if you had a magic wand, Morgan, I think the piece to take out of it would be the money.
We need to.
That's a whole systemic overhaul of the medical industrial complex.
And when you
because
say that,
money is the motivator.
yes.
And that shouldn't be money. It's like, we give you these drugs, we do these procedures, we implement these things, we test this on you and test you for this and give you a Tums for $200. And then we give you an induction, and we give you an epidural, and then we give you a C-section. Like, it's all about money. It's not about
Healthcare. It's
Yeah,
not about,
quality.
it's not about birth.
it's not about, it's not even about science.
No, it's not.
They're not
Can I
doing anything that science says is helpful or productive.
Can I just second Kathleen and say I was just venting to my partner while this conversation was like, the solution is right in front of us, and it's because the hospital makes more money when fast births happen in C-sections quickly.
Yeah.
And we know that the answer is integrated medicine with more midwives, so that OBs can treat people who are sick and need care, and more midwives can serve the majority of low risk or moderate risk people. We know that we need like localized units and like continuous care. We know that social support and doulas and centering pregnancy groups are supportive. Like, we have solutions, and it is the money. And I just want to second Kathleen on that so emphatically, because listening to all these stories, I know when I checked in, I said, I'm excited to hear stories. The excitement was the wrong word, because it's infuriating to listen to, but this is like what drives our work. And I'm so appreciating hearing your stories tonight. And it's just, that's the reason. That's the reason, is the money. And that's our whole healthcare system, right? That's everything.
And because our system is the way it is, I personally think, my opinion, willing to die on this hill, the lowest common denominator of persons decides to be an OB. It is not a person with a fire in the belly to assist birth and to be a servant of birth. It's a person who wants to make that money. That's a surgical specialty. They're making bank. And so it does not draw the person with that open heart and that patience and that love to be in the profession at all. It's about power and control and money.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that's our entire healthcare system.
That's our government.
That's the government, that's everything, and the police system. It's unfortunately such a core part of everything we do, our entire framework. And that's why, I will just say this, our goal is to advocate through this human rights lens. We firmly believe that we won't be able to function as a society if we don't lead with human rights instead of putting it on the back burner. And that's what our healthcare does. It puts human rights on the back burner. And you would think after COVID, that light bulb would have gone off, and instead it kind of shifted, right, a more desperate monopoly man to come out. And so what we're seeing is this overhaul, at least from the federal side, of really saying, okay, this is the pressure we need to apply, and this is where to apply it, and this is how we incentivize it. And so we're seeing states like California do things like the Mom on the Bus, even Colorado doing their own version of that to mirror what the federal government's doing to hopefully get those kinds of federal dollars. And it's interesting because even in all of that, there is still this huge gap in recognizing the holistic piece. Exactly. And then focusing on it as a vital part of the resources that we have to provide. I'd like to think California is moving a little faster than the federal government, but we have a lot more work to do because of the fact that I actually see what you're saying now, Samsara, and SB 65. The policy is there to put doulas in place, but it's not there to facilitate what they need to be high functioning and to be effective in their profession. And so that's actually really great feedback for us, because now we get to go back to our groups here and a lot of the co-sponsors and even work on how to amend that and just make that more in depth, because a lot of the counties now are going to now provide doula care. They're going to, it's going to be
and that's, we want to see how those doulas are trained. Are
right.
they trained to be on to follow the corporate line, or
right.
they provide the kind of doula care that you've heard this evening?
Right, exactly. That's the fine line. Yeah. Well, we are in an African American policy group that focuses on a lot of these pieces, and we actually work with the LA County Department of Public Health. So this is really great, at least for us, to bring back as things that we need to talk on as a collective, because their focus is on this whole spectrum, right? And this is a big part of that focus. So I know they'll listen. Everyone is actually super fed up with, like, I think you guys even feel this way too, where we know what the solutions are, but what are we really doing to actually implement them in an effective and efficient way?
Right.
And it's a money piece, but it's also who is behind the pen that's writing the policy. And we just have to catch up as a state to where we are as a society, at least right here in this space of maternal care, because it's long overdue. I've actually I've never understood in depthly fully until now. I've been in the space for a while, what doulas, the full spectrum of the services they provide. It's amazing how many moms I talk to that are so unaware, dangerously unaware, unless they are privileged.
Right.
And when I talk to low-income moms, they feel like it's out of their reach.
Right.
And it's now like it's only for wealthy, it's only for people that live a certain lifestyle. And that's really one of the things that we want to work on, is providing better education and make our community know it's really not, it's not at all, it's not unfeasible, it's not inaccessible.
And it's also, I'm in a funny position here, because really, I would love to have a world where doulas aren't needed. I'd like to go on and be a midwife. I just like to deliver babies but in the African American community, they've always been doulas. There's always been the aunties and the neighbors and the people who showed up to help when the baby was being born. They got shoved out, and now they're really definitely shoved out with COVID, because you can't have your auntie and your grandma with you when you have your baby. You have your partner, if you have one, and maybe your doula, depending on the hospital. But all of us around life and death have forgotten our role, have been talked out of our role as society members. The people who show up and bring the glasses of water and cook the food after the birth don't necessarily have to be people that you pay. That was always happening. Yeah. Poor folks always did it, and poor folks have to do it for rich folks, right? And so it's about re-educating all of us about what birth really is, not the crap you see on, Grey's Anatomy, what birth really is, and how we all have a part, how dads are incredibly important, partners are incredibly important, what that person's role is, because all of those things, if that person has a community that's tight around them, puts that person in a place where you have to bring your healthy body into a hospital, right? When we talk about a low-risk human pregnant person, that means that person's just healthy and safe and not stressed out about money and not worried about having to, pay the rent, and being loved and cared about, and people who are happy that a baby is coming, the community, that woman will have a better chance going through the hospital system with or without a doula. But so many of our moms, and especially poor moms and moms of color, are not. So often I'm told I'm the first person to congratulate my client on her pregnancy. And I meet people in their last trimester. So they've been going to clinic appointments and doctors, and no one said, congratulations. Okay, so if we're going to honor women's choices, we're going to honor pregnant people's choices. If someone has chosen to have a baby, the community should be like, brava, how can we help you? And we don't have that community. That's the problem.
Yeah.
You know, and if we were able to trust our instincts, if clients were able to trust their instincts, they would be able to catch more easily when they're not being led, when they're being led down the primrose path. And they don't.
Do you guys advocate for your clients to be that? Because I in Priscilla's story, I loved how calm and very clear your mom was, right? She was very like, she was very together, and I think everyone wants that kind of strength when they're in that moment. And so it led me to then wonder, you know, how much, or I shouldn't really say how much, but how, I guess, how often is it that your clients have to be that voice, because you want to be able to stay there, so you want to not lose it on them, right? Even though I could never be a doula, because I would have probably waited for someone in the parking lot after I was just being a mess. But right, but really, I guess, how do you advocate for your client? How do you advocate for your clients in that space, or how do you help them advocate for themselves in that space when you see kind of all these different things unraveling?
Clarissa gave a great example of how she was texting with the dad during the
Yeah.
And, you know, we really, like the training that I give my doulas is that we ally with the dad or the mama or the grandma or auntie when the other family members were there. We have many meetings with our clients. We give them complete childbirth education and complete breastfeeding education so they know. But even in that moment, when they're being confronted, you know, some people are mild-mannered. Some people have a hard time with people with the white coats and saying no to them, even when they know that it should be no for them. So we, as much as possible, because we can only speak up so much, especially with these stupid documents and whatnot. We do work with the dad. We do, but at the end of the day, it's the birthing person. You know, if she gives in, it's done. It's a wrap. And then we move into support, and then we move into harm reduction as much as possible. That's all we can do at that point. And then clean up. How do we help them go back together? You know, I've had couples where I'm doing couples counseling with them in the hospital room because the hospital is forcing a C-section on the mother, and the father is like, keep fighting. This is not what we wanted. The dad is like really advocating, and it was really becoming a thing that could have hurt their marriage. And then, yes, it was bad. And so much of the nurses were trying to collude with me to see if they should report that father for being abusive. He wasn't being abusive. He was supporting his wife's birth plan.
Wow.
Should we take action? No, he's fine. That man in the corner crying, he's not hurting anybody. He's crying because he and his wife planned for months. Okay, so I'm having them breathe and talk to each other and look at each other and remember how much they love each other, and help her see, because the nurses are all around her talking to her like her husband's her enemy.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that
it is frightening. It is so frightening. I swear to you, and you guys do this all the time, you live in this world. But when we are talking to our moms, and even when we're in moments like this, I feel like at some point I should, like, sometimes I get mad at myself because I'm like, I shouldn't be surprised. But it shocks me every time. It infuriates me every single time. Like, every time. Like, it didn't happen yesterday, and we know it's happening all the time, right?
as we speak.
It's literally heartbreaking. And we've actually, one of the dads we advocate for now had that happened to him.
Yep.
And he was fighting for his wife. They didn't listen, and she unfortunately passed away. on the
God
table,
bless him. Oh my God.
unfortunately. And now, but the baby survived, but he is a single father of 2 now.
Wow.
And she should absolutely be here. And it's because
We've
of
got black daddies reported to CPS for doing that, for being
Oh.
fathers. Reported to CPS for standing up for their birth plan.
Oh. Yeah. Well.
We got
God
it,
bless
and my
you
poor
all.
doulas are so, my poor doulas.
I'm sorry. God bless you guys for the work that you're doing, for protecting our mommies and our babies and bringing them into this world and bringing them in happy and supported and loved and feeling. Thank you for doing that. And thank you so much for letting me talk to you guys and just be very,
Absolutely.
and I appreciate it.
And we want to, come back again anytime.
Please, I would love
And
to.
please let me know any way that I can be helpful to the work that you're doing, because as I shared, I'm so frustrated with all this talk about equity when we're dealing with this big monolith, this system that doesn't allow for equity, laughs at it behind our backs. All that talk and these processes that are being put into place, we want to be very careful that the hospitals don't co-opt them and then take that federal money. Because what will happen is hospitals will have their own doula programs, train the doulas the way they want, and keep that money.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good plan. I'm making a note of that.
We need to reach out to community doula programs. They're all over the country. To the grassroots doula programs, not the great big donors, not the great big organizations. There are grassroots doula programs, very similar, but not as good as us because we're the best. But folks who are they're doulas who are not getting paid for what they do and just do it because they know they should do it as a just being a good citizen, being a good person. They should get paid. Right? And the hospitals are making enough money. They don't need to scoff up those federal funds and keep grassroots organizations out of the mix.
Yeah, that's a really good.
Something I wanted to add, and I'm gonna have to go soon.
No worries.
I don't know, Morgan, if you've done any research on even know that kind of the history. I think the history of how Black grand midwives were systematically eradicated is so crucial also, because really so much of what happened then is just continues to play out.
Right.
And I do have a really great dissertation that breaks a lot of that down that I could share with you if you wanted to read it.
I would love that.
That kind of just,
I think a very surface level general idea.
Sure.
Of the timeline, right? And through medicine and all that stuff. But I would love to get a more in-depth knowledge and awareness of that.
Yeah, because I think policy-wise, there's some really important things that happened that were there were some best intentions that ended up eradicating midwifery, right? And I can see the potential for that happening now with doulas and with home birth midwives, and we don't want that to happen. So
and also I don't think that the intentions were really that good. I think they were I think they were put forward as good intentions, but behind the scenes, what is the book, Breaking the Black Body? What's that book? That's an amazing book. It talks about how when they went into those communities and they saw the reverence with which the Black granny midwives were held, that they wanted to break that. That they didn't like that these women were so.
I'm not talking about those people, but I'm talking about, there were some people that were like, oh, I'm this researcher, I am this policy person, I really want to do something, and then end up colluding with the wrong people or whatever, that, anyway.
Yeah,
I think it's because then there are those people too. Yes,
because the people behind the scenes who give the money, the big money people, they have their modus operandi too, and they don't just give their money. And really, in the system that's built on sickness, we have to fight really hard to have a system of health. We don't see it anywhere because there's money to be made in miserable, broken people crawling out of the hospitals with their newborns, increased risk of child abuse, depression, physical ailments, potential cancer risks, and certain things that are done that in 20 years, that little newborn could be a cancer patient.
Yeah.
So there is so much, and it's easy to get overwhelmed, but I think it's when people have these conversations, it's really important to have this whole big picture in your head. Because otherwise what happens is mostly Black women start to think that there's something wrong with them. Because I'm hearing from young Black women, I'm just not going to have a baby.
Yes.
That's not the deal.
We had a mom say to
Education,
us,
not the system.
yeah,
That's broken, not their bodies.
absolutely. That is one of the most, that's actually the most heartbreaking thing we hear is when our moms who are young, educated, have careers, married, have partners, have built a life that they feel like is what they want to bring life into. And they have told us verbatim, I had one kid, I wanted to have 4. I'm not doing it again because I don't want to die. And I'm probably going to die. And that is just what their whole reality is. And they don't care that they're resilient stories because their moment being that vulnerable in that space without any type of support, especially right now, was just too traumatic. And now that I'm able to hear from you all what this perspective is too, it adds another lens to the room. And it's so much more inclusive than what these moms are even aware of what they're going through. I think a lot of them don't even know that they are experiencing such targeted, you know, a passive aggressive, sometimes very aggressive, right, treatment. And that's the scariest part. And that's what we want to try to fill in a gap into in our work is doing that education piece. Because moms, and it's kind of, it is a little overwhelming, right? Because you're like, where do you start? Definitely starts there with helping them understand, hey, that's not supposed to happen.
That's not birth, exactly. The first thing that they need to understand is that what happens in an American hospital has very little to do with what birth is supposed to be.
Yeah, that is not what you're supposed to experience. But a lot of stuff, I mean, I know that our moms, even the people in our organization, wouldn't even know because they have never seen it from your perspective. So they don't
Can
even,
I chime in real quick?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Just to add on to what you were just saying, that's the most frustrating thing. So you were describing these women who basically are like, I'm not going to have another kid because it's going to kill me. And they're blaming their body and the birth process. When actually, as Priscilla's story really illustrated, it's actually all the language that they're using as they're abusing people. They're using this language that's shrouding it in all this blame on her and on the baby and not taking any responsibility for the way they actually interfered with the normal, safe physiological process every step of the way. So now, like that's just so heartbreaking that women are like, birth is going to kill me. My body can't do it. And then they're passing that down to the next generation, that belief, that lack of faith and trust in their own body.
Absolutely. And it's particularly, it's horrible for all American women. And it's particularly awful for people who are the descendants of enslaved people. When our ancestors gave birth under hideous conditions, big, fat, thriving babies, the infant mortality rate was not as high then as it is now. Okay, when we were insane, And what was the difference there? Midwifery care. Midwives took care of the Black babies. Midwives took care of the white babies. Because after the white ladies started seeing what was going on with those midwives, they were like, maybe we don't need a doctor. Maybe I want to call Miss Susie down the street and have her come deliver the baby. Right? So it's very important for Black women to remember that we are mighty. We're here because of the fortitude of our ancestors. And if you can have a baby on a dirt floor in a hut, you certainly can give birth in your lovely little 1-bedroom apartment. And if you're not sick, you don't need to be going to a hospital unless you are sick. And you deserve a qualified birth attendant, a midwife of your choice, to come and deliver you wherever you want to have your baby. Like in other countries, mothers get to decide if you're healthy. You just, you want to birth in the hospital, great. You want to birth at home, great. I was listening to a book written by a doula in England, and she was talking about how mothers make a reservation. They get to a certain point in their pregnancy and they make a reservation to birth in the hospital. And how you have to let them know by a certain time so they have the team ready to come to you. If you want to birth at home, they have to get the team together to come to your home. It's like normal. And you just choose. And if you're healthy, you have that choice. And staying healthy is the big thing too. Having, not being, growing your baby in a food desert. Right? Because if you're a healthy human person with a baby inside of you, you have all these choices that if you have high blood pressure and diabetes, you don't. So we could talk forever, but my doulas have to, you see them disappearing.
I know, I'm sorry. I could do.
No. So, please come back again. Let me know whenever you'd like to come back. We're here every Tuesday at 7, unless I'm doing a birth. And let me know how I can help you. We're desperate for this kind of help for the beautiful women in this country and their gorgeous babies. They deserve so much better than what they're getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again. I absolutely am going to come back. This has been like so informative and educational.
Invite your friends. Bring your friends.
Yeah, really, absolutely. I want them to all use doulas. I mean, you should see me. I'm always like, have you looked up this group though? And I'll just send them lists. And we like to do Instagrams with people that we meet and doulas that we meet, so they can share what they specialize in and how, and what they like to do, why they got into it. And I think that always helps at least our moms feel like just they can feel more humanized. They get to see the raw connection and what that connection they just get to feel that organically in real time.
Yes.
And so it kind of demystifies that mystery, right, behind what is a doula, how do they work, how do I find a good one. And I know I've heard from them that it does make them feel more comfortable about exploring that as a resource. So that's all we want to do. We want them to have as many resources as possible.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Tell them they can do it. You can do it.
Yeah.
You can grow a beautiful human being from scratch. You can do it. You are just that amazing. That's what I'd like every pregnant person to know. You're just that amazing. Just, grow a whole person. One day you can go off to college. So it's
really cool. It's really cool.
Miraculous. All right, sweetness. Very wonderful to talk to you, Morgan. Thank you to my stalwart band of doulas who hung in here through the whole thing. Let's talk again soon, okay?
Okay, I will. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, folks.
Thank you.
Priscilla, you rock. You're still in that car. God bless you. Drive safely home.
Thank you. I will.
Adios.